So I'd now like to introduce you to our third speaker for today, who is Nicola Palmer. And Nicola is a senior field ecologist with the Australian Wildlife Conservancy, and she works across the organisation's southwest region. Perth NRM is pleased to support the AEWC's involvement in the Back from the Brink project, stage 2. And today, Nicola's talking a little bit about her primary focus of her role, which is ecological monitoring and survey activities at Karakamia and the Paruna Sanctuaries in the Perth Hills. And she's also heavily involved in the Endangered Wildlife Restoration Project at Mt Gibson Sanctuary, where she works on the planning, implementation and monitoring of mammal reintroductions to the feral predator-free fenced exclosure. Thanks very much, Nicola.
Thank you, Ingrid, and thank you for having me as part of this webinar. I'll just try and get this going. So as Ingrid said, I am a field ecologist with the Australian Wildlife Conservancy. I just thought I'd talk a bit about a research project we've got going down at Paruna Sanctuary, where we've put some GPS collars on some black-flanked rock wallabies down here. So I'll just run you through a very quick background to AWC, Paruna and the rock wallabies at Paruna, and then go through the project and where we're at with it so far. So the Australian Wildlife Conservancy, our mission is the effective conservation of Australian wildlife and their habitats. And we do that through establishing a network of sanctuaries and other managed lands. And we've currently got 30 properties across the country, as you can see in that map, covering more than 6.5 million hectares, so pretty big estate. And we work to improve and maintain ecological health through land management actions on ground backed by science and research. And the project I'm talking to you about today is based down at Paruna in the southwest. We're about 65 k's east of Perth. Pretty uniquely located as a corridor sort of between two national parks. We've got Walyunga down to the southwest and Avon Valley National Park in the northeast. And we've got the Avon River that forms most of our northern boundary, and then low intensity agriculture to the south. And we do have a feral predator fence along our southern boundary, but it doesn't encompass the entire property. So it is permeable to feral species. So at Paruna, the focus of our land management at the moment is very much feral animal control. We do a lot of trapping and baiting for mostly cats and foxes, as well as goats, pigs, and other rogue animals that make their way onto the property. We also do a lot of weed control and fire management. And to date, our fire management has been mostly based around protection of people and properties, and also minimising the risk of like a large-scale catastrophic wildfire. But we're trying to move towards using fire management to improve ecological health as well. And the ecology at Paruna, so we've got quite a few significant populations of fauna. We've reintroduced tamar wallabies and the black-flanked rock wallabies. And we've also got extant populations of things like chuditch, so western quolls, honey possums, pygmy possums, Carnaby's bourdons and red-tailed black cockatoos also all use the property, so it's quite an important area ecologically. And the black-flanked rock wallabies, Michelle kind of spoke about them a bit as well. So they used to occur right across, well, the subspecies lateralis used to occur right across the southwest, but restricted to areas with sort of quite complex rocky outcrops with deep caves, crevasses, things like that. But they've suffered a pretty big decline, primarily due to predation by foxes and also cats, competition with feral herbivores, so mostly goats there, and then habitat degradation and inappropriate fires. We introduced the species to Paruna first in 2001 and sort of did a few top-ups to the population until 2007, but it's been self-sustaining since then. We do monitor it quite regularly. We do an annual trapping survey, and we also every 2 years do a scat distribution survey. So this map here shows all the outcrops that we search for scats at. And we know from that that the vast bulk of the population occurs in these two larger outcrops around here, and that's where we do our trapping as well. And when we look at our trapping data, this is just raw numbers, we can see that since we've been doing the survey in its current form, the population has been low, and it does appear to be declining as well. And so we wanted to get a bit of an idea about why it's sort of not thriving, why it might be declining, even in the face of having quite a low feral predator density at Paruna. So we decided to run a research project, and as part of that, we're putting GPS collars onto the rock wallabies to get a really good idea of their movements around the sanctuary. The questions we sort of wanted to ask from these collars: what are the movements of rock wallabies between and within outcrops at Paruna and beyond? There has been speculation that perhaps they're emigrating to the neighbouring national parks or neighbouring properties. And what are the critical areas on Paruna for the rock wallabies, and how can we integrate that knowledge into our fire management and predator management strategies to better serve the population going forwards? And finally, while we've got the collars on the animals, determine the direct causes of mortality if we have any. So if any of the animals died, and we can figure out whether it's predation, starvation, how can we use that to help us manage the population? And so last year, in our annual survey in August, we put collars on 5 rock wallabies, and they wore them for 5 months. And that's all of the animals that we caught that were big enough to wear a collar. And 5 months is how long the GPS transmitter battery lasted. So that was as much data as we could possibly collect from them at that time. Our collars were programmed to collect locations every 20 minutes overnight, so really high density location data overnight. And then medium density data during the day, so every couple of hours, and that's just to reflect the animals' sort of behavioural patterns. The collars also have a VHF transmitter, so we're able to track them quite regularly to monitor for survival. And I'm happy to say that all 5 our rock wallabies survived the period of collaring, and we were able to retrap them all and get the collars back off them. So I'll just quickly run through the results. I will point out that I have started to filter through the data, but it hasn't been formally cleaned up yet, so there's almost certainly quite a few erroneous points coming out here, but you get a pretty good picture of what's going on. These orange dots that you can see at the moment are where our trap sites are, just to give a bit of context to where the monitoring is sort of taking place. And then we can see the data from the different collars. So that was our first animal, our second, moved a bit further, third, our fourth, and then this guy, 5th one, went right all over the place. And when we look at this data in the context of the questions that we were asking, what are their movements like? So this is where we sort of have defined outcrops through a bit of mapping and things. Some of them are very restricted to one area, and another one, others move around a bit more. That's a bit of area that we're missing in our monitoring. But they don't seem to be moving much further afield than that primary, those main outcrops. What we do see is they're very well restricted into this area, which is bound, you can sort of see, by some pretty well-formed tracks, and our land management team already consider this to be a distinct fire management unit. So we've subdivided the property into different units for fire management, and they're all within one. So the implications that we can have for our fire strategies and predator strategies, we really want to protect that area from fire. So if a wildfire were to get through there, the rock wallabies would probably survive going into caves and things, but they would lose their food source and then become a lot more vulnerable to predation. So this is our fire plan for the next few years, and we're looking to shore up some good fire breaks both to the west and east of that unit, and should a wildfire get into the region, we'll really work to protect that. Similarly, as I said, we do get feral predators on the sanctuary, so we're going to focus feral predator control a little bit more in that area. And then what's next going forwards? So we're still yet to do a formal statistical analysis of the data. I'd really like to look at whether the population changing their behaviour as we put the collars on in August going into December as it dried out and the resources declined? Are they moving away from the outcrops to find water and food, or are they very restricted? And repeating the study over summer again to see what how they respond for resources in drier seasons, and that can help us get a bit of an understanding on how to monitor or manage the population as we go into a sort of drying and heating climate. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at with all of that. And I just want to give a big shout out to our sanctuary manager, Clint, who does all of the feral animal control and burn plans and everything, and all our volunteers that help us out with us. And as Ingrid mentioned, we do receive funding from Perth NRM for this project. So a big thank you for the funding.
Great. Thank you very much, Nicola.